We've all been inspired by the Paralympic Games. What those people can do against so many difficulties really makes us think that anything is possible if you put your mind to it. I want to tell you about how the Paralympic Games came about. Well, in a way, it starts with Adolf Hitler. Now, you will know that Hitler had this idea that some races were inferior. Well, in fact, everybody, apart from the blonde Germans, were inferior. And the Nazi Party had this doctrine which concerned people who were not fit to live. Hitler and his cronies had doctors and hospitals in Germany kill, execute, murder people who had disabilities, mental disabilities, maybe physical disabilities. Ludwig Galtman, a Jewish person, was a medical student in 1936-37. He became a doctor in Germany, but he was not allowed to practice as a doctor. He went on to specialize as a neurosurgeon, and it was through his work as a neurosurgeon that in 1938-39 he was able to escape to England, and that's where he lived. Now, this man was recruited by the RAF initially to build a hospital for returning airmen. You know, many of these airmen came back in terrible shape. They got their planes back, but their backs were broken, their limbs were smashed. Ludwig really knew how to help them, and that's exactly what he did. And the government asked him to build a hospital at Stoke Mandeville to care for these people with broken bones, broken backs, all that kind of thing. And with his skill, he and his team developed all kinds of ways of getting these people back together again. But they couldn't walk. They were permanently disabled, but they were still alive. But he noticed that once these people from the war, airmen particularly, were healed in their body, they weren't healed in their heart. So even though they were alive, they'd lost self-esteem, they'd lost the ability to enjoy anything. He noticed that in the gymnasium, some of the people in wheelchairs were starting to push balls around on the floor of the gymnasium. And then he began to think, what if I enable these people to play some kind of sport? And that's what they developed in that hospital of his. On July 29 in 1948, the day that the London Olympics began, Ludwig had a competition at his hospital. And it was a games for people who were handicapped. And there were a number of events, not as many as now, of course. And this was the beginning, the very beginning of the Paralympic Games. It all goes back to this game, which he and his staff organized at Stoke Mandeville. The first time ever, people with disabilities were matching each other in sporting events. And it was a great idea, and it's gone on to become the Paralympics. But there are many disabilities, not just broken limbs. And in those years, and going right through till the end of the century, there was, for many, a great shame when a child was born with a disability. I'm thinking of Down syndrome, and I'm thinking of autism and that kind of thing. And parents would hide their children away. They didn't want others to know they had an imperfect child. But now we're coming to realize that these people, these individuals, have particular gifts. And they're great gifts and they're helpful gifts. But they only give their gifts to those who love them. John Lennon wrote a song about this. Let me remind you of some of the lyrics. You can shine your shoes and wear a suit. You can comb your hair and look quite cute. You can hide your face behind a smile. One thing you can't hide is when you're crippled inside. Now, he also wrote a verse especially for his church friends. You can go to church and sing a hymn. Judge me by the color of my skin. You can live a lie until you die. One thing you can't hide is when you're crippled inside. Wow. I really believe we're all needed. And as many parents and others have found, when we love people who are differently abled to us, they have other kinds of gifts. They can really help us to be courageous. They can help us to have insight. They see things that we don't see, but they only give their gifts to those who love them. It's not a matter of drugs or special treatment. They have wonderful gifts which we all need in this troubled world. Jesus talked about loving one another, and he meant the whole spectrum of the human race. And I'm grateful for the people in my life who are differently able to me, because they've helped me see some things I never would have seen otherwise, and helped me to have hope and courage. And I'm grateful to Ludwig, that Jewish person who came to England and had the ability to see that these people are great and courageous people, and was able to not only heal their bodies, but help them, in his case through sport, to show that they had gifts to give. We all have gifts to give. And all around us, there are those who are very richly endowed. Let us love one another, and our friends who are differently abled will help us to love ourselves.